Hi, this is Mrs. Curl. Today we are going to be talking about finding an equation of a line when you have 2 points. As you can see from this page, we have these 2 points. A is at 6, 2, and B is at -3, 5, and we're given a graph. And we can use this graph to help us find the equation of a line. We can start by first putting these points on our grid. A is at 6, 2, which is right, let me see here, get a pen, 6, 2, which is right about there. And then B is at -3, 5, which is about there. And let me draw a nice straight line, get a straight line here, that goes through those 2 points. There we go. That looks pretty good. All right, so this was A and this was B. And we want to find the equation of this line. And we can remember from before, we know that slope equals rise over run. And so between these 2 points, I can draw a straight line and then over. And we can see that our rise right here is 1, 2, 3. I can just count those squares. And my run is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that this line, of course, is going down, so we know it's a negative slope. So my slope is going to be -3 over 9, which can reduce to -1/3. And then from our graph, we can look at where it crosses on our y-axis, and we can see that it crosses right here at 4. And so our equation is -1/3 x plus 4. So that's one way we can get an equation if we're given 2 points. Of course, we're not always given a graph, and we're not always given some nice numbers, and therefore we want to be able to solve for the equation of a line algebraically, where that means that we don't have to go ahead and graph it. We can use algebra instead. And that's what we're going to focus on today, finding the equation of a line. And we're going to spend a couple of lessons on this. So that's why this is called Part A. Okay, so the last lesson that you had looked at was finding an equation of a line if you were given slope and a point. So let's start there as a review. In this question, it says determine the equation of a line that has a slope of 3 and passes through the point A, 2, 10. All right, so we already know it's given to us that we have a slope of 3, and we have this point at 2, 10. All coordinate points are simply an x coordinate and a y coordinate. And so if we take a look at an equation of a line, which is simply y equals mx plus b, notice that you not only have m, okay, so let's just draw some arrows. So we have an m value that we can plug in, but we also have an x value and a y value. And so the only missing value now is b, which we can solve for. So let's go ahead. My y value was 10. My m value is 3. My x value is 2. Notice I'm going to put those in brackets because it means multiplication, plus b. Well, 3 times 2 is 6 plus b. And then I want to solve for b. So I'm going to subtract 6 from each side, and I get 4. Okay, let's go ahead then. I have now my slope right here, and I have my y-intercept right here. Let's go ahead and write that equation. Y equals 3x. plus 4. There we go. So when we're given a slope and a point, it's simply just a matter of plugging in the information in the appropriate spots and then going ahead, solving for b, and then writing our equation. But what happens if we're not given our slope? Well, let's take a look. Here we have an equation of a line, and we know that the equation goes through these 2 points. A is at 3, 4, and B is at 5, 10. Now, whenever you're finding an equation of a line, there are 3 steps that we can follow that will always work for us when we're given 2 points. And our first step is going to be to find the slope using our slope formula. So remember our slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we have all those values. So here's x and y. So that's my first point. So I'm going to put little ones by there. And then here is my second point, also in x and y, and I'm going to put little 2's there because it's my second point. All right, let's go ahead and plug these values into our slope formula so we can find our slope. That's always our first step, is finding our slope. So our slope then is going to be y2, which is 10, minus y1, which is 4, over x2, which is 5, minus x1, which is 3. Okay, 10 minus 4 is 6, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3 over 1, or simply 3. That's great. Now we have a slope. Second step, we're going to use the slope that we found and 1 point, and we're going to put that into y equals mx plus b to solve for b. So this is just like what you were doing before. So now we're kind of back to what we were doing when we were given the slope and a point. The only difference is we have 2 points. So you get to pick which point you want to use. Either A or B, it does not matter. You will get the same answer no matter what. And so always pick the one that you think is easiest for you. So let's say I'm going to use m equals 3, that I know, and I'm going to use the point 3, 4. And I'm going to put all this good information into y equals mx plus b. Excuse me. Okay, so slope goes there. This is my x and this is my y. So x is going to go here and y is going to go there. And I get 4 equals m, which is 3, x, which is 3, plus b. So 4 equals 9 plus b. We're going to subtract 9 from each side, and we get -5 equals b. That is awesome. Okay, we found our slope, we found our y-intercept. Our last step, of course, that we don't want to forget is we want to write the equation. Okay, so don't forget, after you've done all this hard work, you found your slope, you found your y-intercept, we need to go ahead and actually write the equation because that's what the question asked. So our equation, of course, is y equals slope, which is 3x, and then minus 5, which is our y-intercept. Okay, so it's always going to be these three steps in order to figure out what your equation of the line is. All right, so let me just kind of scroll back up here. So first, find your slope using your slope formula. Second, taking your slope and 1 point, it does not matter which one you pick, sub it into y equals mx plus b and solve for b. And then third, write the equation. All right, here's another example why don't you pause the video and give it a try on your own and then come back and see if you've done it properly. Okay, hopefully you're back and you've given it a try. So you remember that your first step was to find slope. And of course, I am going to go ahead, x, y, 1, 1, and x, y, 2, 2. And I'm going to find my slope. So 4 minus 8 over 9 minus -3. So we're going to be careful here. We have integers. 4 minus 8 is -4. And 9 minus a -3 is 12. And if I reduce this, I get -1/3 because I can divide both the top and the bottom by 4. All right. That gives me my slope. My next step is to use a point, and it does not matter which point we want to use. Remember I said that? So since point P has a -3 in it, and I'm looking to avoid negatives, I'm going to use 9 and 4 as my x and y. And remember, I have the slope of -1/3. So that's all going to go into y equals mx plus b. So y is 4, m is -1/3, x is a 9 plus b. All right, let's simplify this. So -1 times 9. So remember, when we are multiplying fractions, you multiply your numerators and your denominators. Since that x did not have a denominator, I can put it over 1. And so -1 times 9 is -9, and 3 times 1 is 3 plus b, which -9 divided by 3 is -3 plus b, add 3 to each side, b equals 7. There we go. We got our b. And that worked out really nice, okay? So we had picked a point, 9, 4, and it was nice because even though our slope was a fraction, it still ended up as a whole number. So that was great to see. All right, don't forget your third step, though, of course. Your third step is always to write your equation. So y equals -1/3 x plus 7. There we go. There it is. All right, let's take a look at just another example. So here we go. Again, feel free to pause it and give it a try on your own and come back and see how you did. But if you're having a little bit of trouble with this one, let me get you started. So this one, it looks like they don't give us 2 points. They tell us we have an x-intercept at 2 and a y-intercept at -9. So at first glance, it looks like this isn't 2 points, but it actually is. Okay, so when we talk about x-intercepts, we're talking about where a graph crosses on the x-axis, which means that it has a y value of 0. So your x-intercept, the x is at 2, but your y is at 0. And look at that. We now have a point. Same thing with your y-intercept. We have a y-intercept of -9. That means the graph is crossing on the y-axis. And so if it's crossing on the y-axis, it means it has an x value at 0. And here we are. And lo and behold, look at that. We now have our 2 points, which will allow us to go ahead to find our slope. Let me just do that here. And so this is x1, y1, x2, y2. All right, -9 minus 0. I like these zeros. It makes it so easy to calculate. And then 0 minus 2. Okay, which gives me -9 over -2, which is 9 over 2. And that's my slope. All right, not a very pretty slope. As we can see, it is a fraction. Now, I would prefer that you would leave it as a fraction. I think we should be strong enough in our fraction skills to use fractions. But if you're super struggling with fractions, you can change it to a decimal. All right, let's go ahead then and find our y-intercept. So I have this slope at 9/2. I just need to pick one of my points. Does not matter. So I feel like 2, 0 maybe is the easier point to use. Remember, this is an x and this is a y. So I'm going to get 0 equals 9/2 times 2 plus b. 0 equals. Now, remember, fractions, we said multiply the tops and then the bottoms. So 18/2 plus b. So 0 equals 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then I'm going to subtract 9. And we get b equals -9. Well, of course we got b to equal -9. I didn't even need to do all of that work. Look what the question actually told us. Let's go back up. Okay, this is sometimes when we should be working smarter, not harder. Have you ever heard that? Look right here. I'm going to highlight it for you, maybe in green. Let's do this. It already told me what my y-intercept was. I didn't even need to do all of this work. Look at all the work I did here. And I mean, it's good work, don't get me wrong. And it's great algebra, but I actually didn't need to do all this because I was told in the equation, in the instructions, that our y-intercept was -9. Oh, well, silly me. If you don't notice it and you go ahead and do the algebra, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just doing a little extra work that wasn't needed to be done, but that's okay. All right, last little bit, of course, last little bit, of course, is that we want to write our equation. And we can go ahead and write the equation now. We have let me just get my pen here. We have our slope, so y equals 9/2x, and we have our y-intercept at -9. Okay, so the only one that might have been a little bit tricky there was coming up with the 2 points to start with. But if you realize about an x-intercept and a y-intercept are actually just points, then this question wasn't that difficult at all. Okay, remember, 3 steps. Find your slope using your slope formula. Use your slope and one of your points to find your y-intercept. And then last, write your equation. Okay, make sure if you're having any troubles with this stuff, any troubles at all, you are reaching out to your classroom teacher to ask for help. We are here to help you and to give you the extra support that you need. This stuff is the big stuff for your grade 10 course for next year. So important that you understand how to do it and what it means. So make sure you're reaching out if you need to. Otherwise, stay safe and healthy. Thanks for joining me today.